afternoon, and thank you all for coming, and to farewell William Herbert Golightly. Before going any further, I'm sure Herb would approve of us acknowledging the First Nations people. We gather here today on the traditional lands of the Quandamooka people. We acknowledge their ongoing stewardship of land and sea and the environment, and we pay respect to their elders, past, present and emerging. My name's Jane Beatty, and I wish to thank Herb's and friends for entrusting me with the privilege of assisting at his farewell. I live on the island, and we being Herb and myself, often had the opportunity to talk when travelling on the ferry. His default approach to this world was always to be cheerful, and I greatly admired his stoicism in the recent years, during which he never sought to indulge in complaint or any self-pity at all. If Herb was here, I'm sure he would now be quite glad to join in with us in reciting this ancient prayer just for him. It seems to unite us, and despite all our differences, so I'll ask everyone to join me in reciting the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Now, we're just going to enjoy a minute's silence. We pause for that time to reflect on your dear friend Herb, thinking of all the good times you've spent with him, the tough times, and everything in between. If he was here today, is there something unsaid that you wished you'd said to him? Okay, now send now your thoughts and your loves, and maybe your untold. Okay, today we have a very rich tapestry to present. First of all, we'll hear from Herb's niece, Michelle Anderson, who will speak on behalf of Herb's family in Canada. Would you like to come forward? Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. For those who don't know me, which is most of you, my name is Michelle Anderson, and I'm related to some of Herb's family in Canada. Herb's big sister, Dorothy, is my favorite aunt, and she's married to my dad's big brother. I live in Australia, and I was honored to be asked to deliver this eulogy from Herb's family in Canada. Herb and I often took turns hosting the same Canadian family members when they visited. I wanted to thank you all for being here today to honor his life, especially those watching from Canada, his wonderful family and friends from Australia, and those who have traveled to join us. There's a bit of a background. Herb was raised in a small town on a small farm near Mantario, Saskatchewan, which is close to Etonia. So when you say things on there that says Etonia, Mantario is even smaller. It's right beside it. He was raised in Saskatchewan. Herbie, as his siblings called him, was the middle of 5 children. Although there were no modern conveniences like electricity, running water, telephones, or central heating, Herb grew up surrounded by love in a close-knit, happy family. Herb was a playmate for his older siblings, Dorothy and Jim. When Herb was just a toddler, they put him in a pail, attached a pail to a pulley, used to pull the feed up to the barn hayloft, and they pulled him up to the loft about 6 meters above the ground. Aunt Dorothy remembers her mother would come running out of the house in full panic mode. Herbie was rescued. His siblings were surprised by how angry their mother got. His younger sister, Daphne, remembers that as a middle child, Herb was on the receiving end of many pranks by his 2 older siblings, but he also turned around and gleefully played the same pranks on his 2 younger siblings. This is a side. Do you guys ever have, like years ago, have outdoor dunnies? Wooden outdoor dunnies? Okay, good. Daphne also remembers that Herb was not a teenage troublemaker, but he did participate in the quaint Halloween custom of pushing over outdoor toilets in the village of Mantario. Woe to the person who stumbled into the pit in the dark. Growing up, he was quiet and curious and had a very special connection to his mother, Grace. His oldest sister, Dorothy, remembers he was the only child she ever knew who read atlases instead of books. As a child, Herb loved to draw and to read, mostly atlases and other facts about other countries. The summer before 5-year-old Herb started school, he contracted polio, was hospitalized for a month. In the hospital, the medical staff wrapped him in near scalding towels for 24 hours a day for the first week. He recovered in time to begin school in September, but he was only allowed to spend half-day class for a few months. He was healthy before the polio and in time regained his strength and his health. He was not truly interested in sports, and when he tried ice hockey, as a young boy, his legs were not strong enough because perhaps of the polio. He did play baseball as a young man, but his siblings were happy when he found golf when he left Canada. He often talked about his golf, and it was clear he had much enjoyment and many friends on different courses. As a kid, all farm kids know how to drive big grain trucks and tractors. Herb was never interested in farming and machinery. In fact, his older brother Jim remembered when Herb was a teenager and when the car he was in got stuck on a muddy road close to home. Herb ran back to get the trailer to pull the car out of the mud, but he didn't know how to start it. He had to get his 7-year-old brother Johnny to come and start the tractor for him. Jim also remembered that one spring when Herb came home from the university for the summer, he was tasked with harrowing some newly seeded fields. When instructed by brother Jim to grease the harrow wheels on the harrow, Herb very carefully greased all the valve stems on the wheels, but not the wheels. These became two of the often told funny family stories. Herb was always someone who looked at the horizon and wondered what was beyond it. He loved his family, his home, Ontario and Etonia, but as he grew up, it became very clear that small corner of the world was not going to be enough for him. He attended high school, got a BA at university, and then got a job being a traveling salesman. He traveled all through the province of Saskatchewan, selling and taking orders for meat deliveries to grocery stores. He flew to Australia for a year and worked in a department store. Then he returned home to Canada. He discovered an opportunity to attend university tuition-free in Australia if he promised to teach at least 2 years in Australia in return. His father, Bill, was very proud of his son for going to university, and even prouder when he got a second degree in Australia and built a great career in education in his chosen country. When he told us he was moving to Australia, we were heartbroken to see him go, but not surprised. He needed to travel and be in a place as big, as bold as his spirit. His Canadian family always looked forward to Herb's letters, especially his mother, Grace. The arrival of one of those thin blue airmail envelopes with the thin onion skin pages would cause his mother, Grace's face to light up, and she would pass those long letters around and share information in them and generally show how proud she was of her very faraway son. Herb's skills as a writer were great, and he had beautiful penmanship, and we would visualize what his life was like from his writing. He made stories come to life for us in Canada. International mail was very unreliable when he first lived abroad. So even though he faithfully wrote home every 2 weeks, sometimes there would be no letters for a month. Then 2 would arrive on the same day. And it was a worry for his family as they had no other way to keep in touch. In later years, his parents would receive cassette tapes from him and they could hear his voice. His siblings do not remember Herb ever talking on the phone to his parents. His mother, Grace, in her old age, traveled to Papua New Guinea to visit him. All of his siblings at one time made their way to visit Herbie in his chosen countries, Papua New Guinea and Australia. Herb came back to Canada every second year for Christmas, as that coincided with summer school break. Those visits were much anticipated, and he spent time in all the homes of his siblings and his parents. Everyone stocked up on Canada Dry ginger ale when Herb was coming home, as it was his favorite drink. His nieces and nephews remember him as a tall, thin man who was quiet, thoughtful, caring, and humble with an easy laugh. He came home with wonderful gifts for the younger ones, boomerangs, kangaroo leather, change purses, coins, and more. His stories were wonderful for the youngsters to hear and then proudly repeat to their friends. The youngsters imitated his accent and bragged about their uncle who lived in Australia, a very faraway land. He truly found his home in Australia. He embraced the Australian way of life. He loved the year-round heat, the career he chose, the cultures he was exposed to, and his home and his garden. His nephew Darren remembers a week-long visit with Uncle Herb in Papua New Guinea. Each evening, they would watch the Port Moresby news, and Herb would comment on the various people mentioned in the news, such as politicians and business leaders, by saying, "I've educated that person." Darren remembers there are many people that Herb recognized, at least one every night. Herb helped set up the education system in PNG when it was only an Australian territory. It was his life's work, his passion, and apparently he took great pride in his accomplishment. In many photos we saw of the ceremonies when PNG became independent, Herb was the only non-Indigenous face visible. Herb brought 3 students from PNG home to Canada for Christmas. It was truly a great experience for these students to experience Canada. I think it's -30. And for our family to meet and learn from these students that Herb was working with. Herb was able to attend the wedding of a niece in Hawaii, a wedding of a nephew, and also one of his great nephews in Saskatchewan. It made those weddings so much more special because Uncle Herb was there. The Hawaiian wedding was quite memorable. This is Johnny and Jerry's daughter, Janelle, sorry. Herb really enjoyed or over-enjoyed the champagne toasts and had to be escorted to his lodgings arm in arm by 2 of the bride's aunts. That brought many chuckles. Herb was the best host ever in his countries of PNG and Australia. He was so welcoming and generous with his time and cooking great meals, touring guests around, and had such a vast knowledge of the areas he lived in. He shared his friends with his visitors. His younger brother, Johnny and Jerry, remember how Herb loved Keith's dog, Trudy, and always had a treat for her. 2 of Herb's great nieces visited with their Uncle Herb in Australia and were so grateful for his hospitality and the opportunity to get to know him. My mom came in 2016 and spent a day with him here in Coochiemudlo as well. And when Jerry and Johnny came, the 3 of them came up and spent St. Patrick's Day with us. Having an expat brother was tough, especially before modern telecommunications, email, and video calling. But Herb was incredible at maintaining connections. He sent letters, photos, emails, and participated in social media with his family. He remembered birthdays, weddings, and returned often to Canada and taught us that distance doesn't define a relationship, love does. We will miss most his laugh, a quiet but genuine laugh, whether it was in person, on a phone call, or in a video call. He leaves behind a legacy of bravery, an example of how to build a life from scratch in a new place. His accomplishments in education and reputation as a warm, loyal friend, both to many here and in Australia. We, the Canadian family, wish to thank with all of our hearts his people, his friends, the kind friends who loved and took care of Herb over the years and his finals month. You were his chosen family in his chosen country. Words will never express our gratitude to you, but please take to heart our love and undying appreciation. This is from Cindy. To Herb, we miss you every day. We're so proud of the life you built. And as they say in Canada, bye, see you later. They say in Australia, you've gone walkabout one last time. Rest easy, dear brother. You are so loved.
Knowledge of them, they worked together in New Guinea. They were both secondary inspectors in PNG at the same time.
I was very lucky to work with Herb for many years in PNG, especially the last 10 as a secondary school inspector. I can honestly say that Herb was the most professional, the most reliable, and the most trustworthy of all inspectors. The Papua New Guinea inspectors, about half of the inspectors were Papua New Guineans, and Herb had trained half of them. They all went to him for advice. He was trusted by everybody. I can give you an example of how well he was trusted. Part of our job as inspectors every year was to write inspection reports on teachers, young teachers for registration, teachers who wanted to be promoted and move up the pay grade, and occasionally a teacher who needed to be demoted. We had to write these reports in very formal kind of legalistic language. And then at the end of the year, we met in a nice hotel in Moresby and sat around a big conference table, and each inspector, 20 of us, would read the reports out. And at the end of our reading, we'd have to make a recommendation, promotion, registration, and then everybody would vote. Straightforward if people wrote the report and the recommendation agreed with the body of the report. Wasn't always the case. Our worst inspector, he's not here now, was an ex-Australian Christian brother who had been a ferocious headmaster for 30 years and was a ferocious inspector too. He was the kind of person you wouldn't want to be your inspector. People just didn't trust his reports. Herb wasn't a bit like that. So when it was Herb's turn, Herb would get his report. He would clear his throat, as Herb always did, and the first sentence would come out clear as a bell. And then Herb's voice would trail away to a low Canadian rumble. And then at the end, he would clear his voice again, throw it again, and make his recommendation. And then despite the fact that we hadn't heard a word he had said, every hand went up and voted for Herb. We all knew Herb would never do the wrong thing. He was a wonderful educator and a very good man. Thank you.
I met Herb at Sageri National High School in the late 1970s when I played the keyboard for the school's production of Jesus Christ Superstar and taught the music students for a term while they were waiting for a music teacher to arrive from overseas. And then Herb and I, in later years, both worked as consultants on 2 AusAID-funded education projects. We both had homes at Yorkeys Knob in Cairns for holidays. And then when I moved down to Coochiemudlo Island, I had different friends move down, Dan Doyle, who's here, and also Herb came down then to move down here on the beach. And we would enjoy long walks along the beach as we did up at Yorkeys Knob and along the beach here with my dog Trudy. And so there'd be coffee at his place or my place and storytelling time. What's happening in the world, what movies were on, if we're going to a movies. And if we went to a movie we both liked, we'd go to a restaurant for a meal. And his favorite were the Indian restaurants there. We enjoyed holiday trips. Herb enjoyed holiday trips, not only in Honolulu and to Canada, but he also enjoyed going a number of times to Morocco with one of the teachers from Sageri, Lance Taylor, whose paintings are in his house. You might have seen them in the Morocco work when you were there today. Herb maintained contact with former students and teachers, and he was very proud of his premier Sageri basketball team that he coached. He also enjoyed a contact with ex-Sageri students, and we had one of his students, Dr. Tauboga, who's a specialist up in the Sunshine Coast Hospital, came down to visit him here. When Herb moved to Coochiemudlo, he became very involved in the island golf tournaments, and he has the golf awards in his home. He also enjoyed a weekly social game on Friday with Malcolm, who you just heard about, and so they would enjoy that. He also took different roles as treasurer with the Heritage Society, and where his Scottish eye for detail and accuracy was greatly valued. And I wish to thank Herb's friends on the island, the ones especially now, after Herb is gone. John and Kathy, who looked after Herb's garden, Bridget, who cleaned his home, Chris Leonard, who carried out home repairs, Jane Churchman down the road, she'd always bring up gifts of homemade pickles and jams, and Brian and Mary, his next door neighbours, used to pop in and keep an eye on him and ring up if they were worried about anything. Here we have Barbara Reid too, and Mary Russell gave her fantastic medical support, as did Julie and Michael Vector and Pam Shorts. Herb made many good friends here on Coochiemudlo. Herb was also a regular guest at my dinner parties, and my partner knew Jackson how to cook steamed barramundi just the way that Herb liked it. Herb joined our island Libram birthday parties with Christine Leonard's here, Barbara Reid, Pam Jamison's here, Jackie Nugent, and many others whose birthdays were in October. Herb used to love emailing his sets of jokes that used to come through from Canada. I was honoured to be given the responsibility to work with Malcolm, Herb's Canadian family members, and Herb's lawyer in carrying out Herb's wishes as an executor of his will. Today we celebrate Herb's life, and I value Herb's integrity, honesty, and friendship as Herb followed the advice in Shakespeare's Hamlet. This, above all else, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day. Thou canst not then be false to any other man. Now I'm going to go on to Jackson posted in the Post Courier in Papua New Guinea the notice of Herb's death, and he had different messages coming through asking about him. And this is a surprise for Jerry, particularly in Canada, because this is of one of the students who visited him. And this is from how I crossed paths with late Herbert Golightly. I first met Herb in 1974 at Sageri National High School. I was doing my grade 11 then. He was my economics teacher. At the end of 1974, I took him to meet my family in Lae, Morabie Province, where I come from. We went to my village, Guyane, in the Nawab district of the Morabie Province. And a year after, in 1975, Herb became my guidance teacher. I planned on becoming a pilot then, but Herb told me, take up civil engineering. You're good in mathematics and science, and you'll serve your country well through civil engineering. Herb was more than a teacher. He was a father to me and my siblings. He taught me how to drive. On some weekends, he would have me drive him to Port Moresby and back. He even helped pay school fees for one of my younger brothers at high school. I was one of the PNG students Herb took to Canada for Christmas and New Year holidays in 1976. I was already at the University of Technology doing my second year in civil engineering. I enjoyed my time at the farm, harvesting grains and looking after cattle during winter. Herb touched so many other Papua New Guineans through his teaching, wisdom, dedication, his kindness and guidance, who are now highly qualified professionals in Papua New Guinea. He was also heavily involved in sports, especially in basketball coaching, and many of those students whom he coached represented Papua New Guinea internationally. I'm one of the many he touched, and I've become who I am because of his commitment, guidance, and mentorship. My family and I caught up with him in Cairns in 2013, just before he moved to Coochiemudlo. We spent time catching up at his home in Yorkeys Knob, had lunch at the yacht club, and he took my two daughters sightseeing around Yorkeys Knob and the beaches. The last time I spoke to him was early 2025. He advised me that he had some very good friends on the island who helped him with his chemotherapy, trips, etc. Through this, I want to say thank you to his good friends on the island. I also want to pass on my heartfelt condolence to late Herb's family in Eatonia, Saskatchewan, Canada. Papa Herb, for myself and my family, we will be forever thankful and will treasure your memories in our hearts. Rest in peace, Papa. Now, thank you.
It's appropriate that I brought Bruno with me, because when I move away, when I go away to various places, he always comes and stays with Keith. And of course, Keith commonly had morning visits with Herb every morning, while this gentleman accompanied him. So that's why I brought him with me today, because he was one of the friends. We've heard a little about Herb's involvement with education in Papua New Guinea, and nobody can underestimate the contribution that he made, starting from way back in 1988. He became a headmaster to a school which was just getting itself off the ground as a high school in one of the remoter parts of the country. And I've got here quotation, a statement from the then Deputy Secretary for Education in 1988. Mr. Golightly ran an extremely effective school. He had encyclopedic knowledge of students and their background, which arose from a genuine interest and concern for them. He has ensured that Sugeri, the name of the school, was one of the best performing national institutions in the country. Mr. Golightly is reserved by nature, but is extremely fair and objective in his decisions. In all the time I have known him, he has displayed a high degree of coolness and rationality in every respect of his work. Mr. Golightly is without one of the Department of Education's most experienced and trusted field officers. I haven't heard a statement of that kind from anybody else in all of the many years that I worked with the Department of Education. It was a fitting That it alone, without saying anything else, is a fitting tribute to the wonderful communication, the wonderful focus that he had on his role within the country, within Papua New Guinea, moving beyond being a mere principal, a mere head teacher. The time came when Australian government decided to provide some funding for education. Projects were started, and in various provinces within the country. One of the biggest ones, the biggest province, Morabie, one of the largest provinces of the country, and who was there to provide the training sessions that were necessary for developing the school communities. Herb was there. He was selected to be principal advisors from other projects, again in the Morabie province, where he had to manage the building of classrooms, teachers' houses, water supply, everything, starting from nothing. And he did it. He didn't do it. The people who worked with him in such a wonderful way that they themselves produced the goods that were required. So Herb's role within the education system is one that the family can be very proud of. Getting to more closer to home, I had the opportunity of at times working with him in dealing with the projects that were running. But then later we were friends up at Soki's Knob. We had a good function and friendships with each other. I will forever remember Herb. Thank you.
Barbara, first tell us your studies. I met Herb through Keith. We used to have our birthdays, celebrate our birthdays. He'd come around home for Christmas lunch a couple of times. And we just built up a friendship. And then when he started getting sick, he would call me, or Keith would call me. In the later years, he had quite a few falls, and I'd get the phone call, and Mary would come with me, sometimes being a retired doctor. She'd come and check him out, make sure he was all right. We went around there one time and there was blood right through his house. He'd walked through and he had a fall and walked this blood right through the house. And he'd gone off to hospital. I didn't go and visit him as much when he was in hospital because I've had health problems myself. But I had the unfortunate task of 2 days before he died, telling him the reasons why he couldn't come home. And the doctor rang me and thanked me for that. And he argued with me big time because, because I had introduced him to these washcloths. So he had his shower right, didn't have to get in his shower. And then his cooking he could do himself. And he didn't need anything else. We disagreed on it, which was a shame. But on Wednesday before he died, the doctor rang Keith. I said to Keith before he went overseas, I bet he goes while you're away. And sure enough, on the Wednesday morning, I got a phone call from the doctor asking if they could put in a syringe driver for his pain. And he was gone on Friday.
but he was a lovely man. I took him to chemo for, what, 2 or 3 years? 3 years?
Every fortnight.
Every fortnight.